And here we are. Welcome back to the Redshirt Sophomore podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Dawson, and joining me today is co-host and brother, Chris Dawson. How you doing?
Fantastic. Excited to talk some college football, rivalries, and running backs. It doesn't get better than that. The diehard college football fan, you love the nitty-gritty of the running back, and you love the nitty-gritty of rivalries.
Absolutely. Yeah, rivalry comes from mailbag question, which is fantastic. We love mailbag questions. Just email us at theredshirtsophomore@gmail.com, and I will be sure to get to those. Yeah, but in other news, Georgia lands a 4-star defensive line commit who surprised absolutely zero people. Virginia Tech lands a 4-star athlete. Look at our guy, Brent Pry, go. We want them to be good so bad.
Hey, look at this. Look at this. Virginia. See, we don't hate the Virginia schools.
Yeah. Well, Brent Pry might not like you wearing that, but
Well, yeah.
it is what it is. I really hope they're good. And I mean, I drafted him, so I mean, he happens to be like really, really good. I might take credit for that, even though I thought he was gonna be.
Who's the last pick you
It
took?
was like my last pick. I'm just gonna take credit for that. If they like go to a bowl game, I'm just gonna take credit for that. I'm gonna just say, oh yeah, remember like back in June when, MD was like, they're gonna be good. Well, I did not say that at all. So you guys can call me out when that happens. But that's not to say we don't love them over there. So a lot of other official visits been going on. A lot of smoke in the recruiting world. Virginia Tech might not be done either. They might not be done. But yeah, I don't know if you have any other nuggets that
No, you covered it. I think this week was another big one. Next weekend will be another big one. We love June. We love June and July for recruiting because that's where you really get a lot of nuggets, a lot of official visits, a lot of Twitter, like I don't even know the word for it, but like followings and like stalking,
yeah, a lot of hype.
deciphering tweets. That's what I'm trying to say. Deciphering tweets from recruits. So we love it.
Yeah, and it's like high school players, like it's the biggest moments of their lives up until this point. So getting to see them like their decisions, the videos with their families, and like some of it's a little bit unnecessary, but we love recruiting in June. But we also love in June talking about what's gonna happen in August. Here we
Mm-hmm.
go. Mailbag question of the day. Thank you, Will, by the way, for submitting this question. If you want to submit a question again, it's theredshirtsophomore@gmail.com. We love reading these. We love reading these. If you want to tell me that I suck, that's fine because I'm probably gonna read it too. So you're gonna get a kick out of that, anyways. All right. So Will asks, who will win more games this year, Wisconsin or Iowa? Whoa, that's a pretty loaded question. But instead of talking about those two teams for the next 10 minutes, CD and I came up with the idea that how about we each come up with our own list of rivalry games or rivalry schools, and we just rattle off rapid fire. So I'll give CD a rivalry, or he'll probably. I'm gonna have you start and give me a rivalry. I'll take the first rivalry and saying that I have more time to think about it. Um, you rip off a question, I get 30 seconds to answer it. If I go over 30 seconds, you cut me off. Then I ask. I give you two teams, and then you tell me which team's going to win more games. Back and forth, back and forth. We each got a list of a bunch of guys, a bunch of teams. I think each of us are going to give 4. So if there's overlap, we have lists of a lot of teams. So, all right. Well, here you go. Let me open up my timer here. All right. Feed me. Feed
All right.
me.
All right, Matthew, from Will, who wins more games this year, Wisconsin or Iowa?
It's got to be Iowa. I think it is. Iowa's still low-key loaded on defense. I know they lost Riley Moss and Lucas Van Ness. Jack Campbell's their biggest loss, I think. But Deontay Craig on the D-line, that dude had less snaps, more sacks, more tackles for loss than Lucas Van Ness. I think that guy's really good. I think they upgrade on offense. If they're a top 80 offense, I'm going to say this. If they're a top 80 offense, they're going to win 9 games. That's all I'm going to say. And I don't think Wisconsin can afford that much leeway on offense if they struggle in their first year with a new coach and new quarterback.
Not too bad.
Yep, let me come after you now. Right away, off the bat, Texas OU, go.
Give me Texas. Okay, Sark in year 3 versus Venables in year 2. I trust Sark more. What he's done with that whole roster, I think it's a more complete roster. I think he's got a better coaching staff. Quinn Ewers takes a leap. You have a healthy offensive weapons, namely Xavier Worthy and our guy from Wyoming, whose name's escaping me right now, but I only have 30 seconds. You need some more improvement from the defense, which I think he gets. Bama game's a tough draw, which makes the line closer to between OU and Texas, but ultimately Texas wins the Red River rivalry game and has one more win than OU.
Just got it off. Just got it off. That's good. I agree.
All right, for you now to the SEC, University of Florida and Kentucky.
That's such a good one because I think it's such a battle of mediocrity. I kind of like Kentucky here. They're pretty similar in talent. They did similar in the transfer portal, but Kentucky, sure, they lost their best offensive tackle to Florida, but they got two in the transfer portal. That's a hard market to get tackles, right? Normally you're recruiting tackles, but they got them both in the transfer portal. I just think Florida lost too much talent, and if you're putting the hands of your offense in Graham Mertz, I think you're gonna have a problem. I've seen too much of him. Get him out of here. Give me Kentucky and Devin Leary.
I
Now
don't hate that.
I'm gonna come after you now. You're gonna stay in the Big 12. Give me TCU Baylor.
All right, Battle of Texas. Let's go Baylor. I think Blake Shapen and Dave Aranda, takes a step forward. They lost a couple close games last year. They maybe shouldn't have. I think they could reverse that this year. TCU ultimately takes a step back from what they were last year, of course, and it evens it out. I think Baylor has more wins than TCU this year.
Nice.
All right, for you out west, we have the Civil War, Oregon and Oregon State.
Gosh, that's one of my favorite rivalries or favorite names of a rivalry. But Bowman Nix is back for Oregon. They upgraded talent wise everywhere. They get USC and Oregon State at home. But it's gonna be a close one. I give Oregon 10 wins and I give Oregon State 9. Because Oregon State doesn't draw USC. They return everyone on the offensive line, and they get Washington and Utah both at home. I could see Oregon State. I could see them both winning 10 games, but give me the slight edge to Oregon just because of the talent on that team. I think is just slightly better.
It's going to come down to the Civil War game. That's going to decide that.
It might. It might. All right, coming back at you. Here's a big one that I think a lot of people are wondering. Clemson and Florida State. Give me that.
I'll take Florida State. I think Mike Norvell is on a heater right now. Florida State is probably the hottest name in college football right now in this offseason. And it doesn't feel good to see them back to their national contenders like they should be, where they belong. I actually like Clemson more this year than I did last year with Cade Klubnik and Garrett Riley, but I don't think they're the automatic ACC favorite this year like they have been. I think Mike Norvell in Florida State takes another big step in the national conversation. Give me Florida State.
Interesting. I do think that first game is gonna for Florida State's gonna indicate that win total for them as well.
What a
Essentially,
treat, by
like
the way. What a treat.
Week 1, are you serious? We get Florida State LSU, but all right.
All right.
Anyways,
For you, last one for you in the ACC again, North Carolina State versus North Carolina.
oh. And what's crazy is that I actually don't have to think about this. Give me NC State. 1,000%. Give me Brennan Armstrong. Give me Robert Anai. Give me Brennan Armstrong with more talent. We talked about this in the last quarterback episode. He is a dog. I think North Carolina takes a step back. Phil Longo lost. Josh Downs lost. How about everyone on their defense lost? The only person they didn't lose is Gene Chizik, who probably should be out of there at this point. And UNC plays Minnesota and South Carolina out of conference. Yeah, give me NC State. Come on, let's go. All right, I'm coming right back at you. I just wanted to hear this. I just want to hear this from you. Ole Miss or Texas A&M? What's it gonna be?
Wow. It might not be a rivalry in terms of, long-standing tradition, but Lane Kiffin and Jimbo Fisher is the best rivalry in college football right now, I think. I think Ole Miss actually beats A&M for a third straight year. Crazy enough, by the way. But I think A&M actually wins more games because of their draw. They don't have to play Georgia, which Ole Miss does. I think A&M goes 9-3. Ole Miss goes 8-4, and A&M wins more games than them this year. Even though Ole Miss is probably a better team.
Better team, but A&M wins games. No, sounds like I don't know, but we'll see. I really hope we don't lose to Ole Miss because wow, imagine in the last 3 years going 1-5 against the Mississippi schools. That gets any other coach in the SEC West fired. By the way,
Yeah. 9-3 though might save his job, but which is
9-3
sad
would
at
save your
A&M.
job. But if you're not, yeah, if you're 9-3 with a loss to Ole Miss, you save your job. But if you're anywhere like close to like 7-5, if you're in 7-5 territory and you lost to both the Mississippi schools again for the third straight year, wow, it it'd be really, really, really hard to rebound from that. But yeah, so that's all we got for rivalries today. If you guys like that kind of rapid fire segment, please let us know in a comment or an email. If you have a rapid fire segment for us, we'd be happy to take those over. We love all the content that we can get. We love talking about things. In the rapid fire format, right? It kind of lets us like, I mean, we all have like some notes here about like some significant rivalries, but a lot of this is like off the top of our heads, which is like a lot more gratuitous, like a lot more from the heart. So I'm a big fan of that. Let us know if you guys really like that. I was a fan of that.
Plus, it lets us hit more teams, more rivalries, more topics that we normally don't do. If we do a deep dive, 10 minutes, we could talk about all these games for 10 minutes. But at the end of the day, we want to get a more diverse population of college football, their teams and their rivalries and who they're interested in. So it gives us a chance to talk about more things.
I agree. CD knows that I can talk about NC State for an hour. I love those guys. I love the Wolfpack. Anyways, to the main event today. Just like we did in the last episode, if you didn't get a chance to check that out, check out our episode 4 where we did a fantasy quarterback draft, head to head, me versus CD. What are the rules? We each get to pick a running back from a Power 5 conference. And then in the quarterback draft, we only got one alternate because running backs are so injury prone. They get a lot of touches. We each gave each other 2 alternates this go around. So I think running back is a lot harder to draft than quarterback just because I think a lot of teams run by committee. There's sometimes guys that like sneak out of nowhere, right? Like everyone thought when Zach Evans transferred last year to Ole Miss that he was going to be the guy, but ultimately he wasn't. By maybe a guy that gets picked today. I don't know. He was pretty good. He was pretty good. So we might drop some sleepers here and there. We might drop some sleepers as well. Guys to definitely look out for. Christopher likes to say, if you're in a dynasty college football league, which I'm sure there's some that exist out there. They don't seem that logical, but maybe some guys to slot in the reserves for years to come.
If there's 30 people that want a dynasty college football fantasy league, let me know because I will start one and I will run that for us.
And you know what? I'm right there. And well, if it were to start this year, you guys would already know what CD and I's teams are kind of looking like at this point. But so yesterday, I got the first draft pick of the day in the SEC. And I chose Carson Beck. Today, I'm going to give you the chance at the first pick. So, what's going to be, Chief?
I will graciously take Rocket Raheem Sanders from Arkansas. There was no way I was going to let him fall to you. I could have taken, that running back we talked about earlier from Ole Miss. I'll let you say his name if that's who you're going to take.
I don't know. Well, it's a mystery.
There's some good running backs in the SEC for sure, but I think his production level and his potential in that offense is astronomical. I think it's interesting to see the post Kendall Browse era, what he does there. But I think, again, yes, he has to battle KJ Jefferson, who's also on my fantasy squad for touchdowns. But I think he's gonna have more opportunities there because they're gonna limit his injury risk. I think this year after seeing what happened last year with him.
That would have been my pick. I mean, Arkansas has been a top 5 rushing team in the country the last 2 years. They're just a weapon on the offensive, like in the ground game, and Rocket Sanders has been a massive part of that. He's just a monster. He's just a monster, and like that's the safe pick. That's the best pick, arguably the best pick that you can get in this entire draft in terms of like stability. He's going to get workload, and he's going to get production. I think that's I think that's a no brainer. I thought there was a chance. I was hoping to incept the idea into your brain to take this guy. I'm gonna go ahead with Quinshawn Judkins. I mean, enough said. We talked about Zach Evans coming in there. Oh, he was supposed to be the guy. No, Quinshawn Judkins was a guy. Are you serious? Well over 1,000 yards, lots of touchdowns. Average was about 6 yards a carry almost. I mean, he was a monster. I got to see him firsthand at Kyle Field. He obliterated us. He literally obliterated us. I wasn't sure I was bought into the hype. I'm like, oh, true freshman, 3-star. Well, come on. Like, sure, he gets the benefit of running in the Lane Kiffin offense. No, he's very good. Now, the only concern that I have is that is this offense going to change a lot, right? Because, 2 years ago, Matt Corral, they're shucking the ball around the yard. And then last year, they go to a run game, and they were top 5 offensively rushing the ball in the country. Are they going to go back to a greater passing attack because they brought in these quarterback talents and receiver talents? Or are they going to stick to the ground game with Quinshawn Judkins? I don't know. It is nicer not having Zach Evans in the backfield though, which could prove to be pretty awesome for me. But yeah, I think there's a tier 1 in the SEC. It's Rocket Sanders and it's Quinshawn Judkins. Not to say there's not other talented guys. In fact, I think there's guys that you might like better as a prospect. But for fantasy value, for the purposes of what we're doing, when we're tying this up at the end of the season, we're both going to be happy with what we picked here.
Yeah, I mean the SEC talent is actually really pretty cool, pretty good in for running backs. The problem is at schools like Georgia and Alabama specifically, you have those running back by committees or guys that would steal carries that you are worried about. Well, these two guys are obviously a tier ahead of everybody else in their room and are elite talents themselves. In terms of a sleeper guy that I want in the SEC that you guys should know about, Noah Kane, kind of fallen off the map a little bit, was a 5-star, committed to Penn State, transferred to LSU after some injuries, um, battled with John Emery Jr. last year. John Emery Jr. is having some academic problems right now, I believe. He was a former 5-star in his own right, but he probably won't be available, leading Noah Kane to be that top alpha spot. Last year, the top rusher for LSU actually was Jaden Daniels. I don't think that can stay true this year if they want to compete for a national championship. I think Noah Kane or someone has to step up. My bet's it's gonna be Noah Kane.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic sleeper. Not someone that I would consider drafting just because of the tier 1 that we got right here, but like there's a third person here, and I had the third pick. That's not a bad third pick. Um, I mean, another third pick that you could look at is Trevor Etienne, but I don't think I don't think I trust that offense with Graham Mertz there at the helm. I'm gonna keep saying it. I'm gonna keep saying I'm gonna get burned. Watch Graham Mertz just have an unbelievable year, and we're just gonna sit here with dunce caps on our head come January when he's walking up there with the Davy O'Brien Award. But no, that's just not happening. But I mean, another sleeper that I like, guy that I'm kind of like just looking out for, who might not be picked this year in this draft, but next year, Justice Haynes, man. All I've heard is just ridiculous things out of camp, right? He kind of fits the bill of like a 3-down back. He's 5'11", 200 pounds from Georgia, 4-star recruit, number 3 running back in the country. Missed Alabama this year. He's probably going to be their third guy in that running back room if I had to guess just to start out. But don't be surprised if he's getting a lot of touches this year. Um, but he might be that guy moving forward after Jace McClellan does his thing and goes beyond college football.
Yeah, if you follow recruiting pretty heavily, you know who Justice Haynes is. He was a highly rated guy out of Georgia. Bama got him, and they were really excited they did. And obviously, it's shown to have some early signs of promise. What he did in the spring game. That's a guy you definitely didn't know about. I don't hate that at all. I love the way he runs. His contact balance and vision and all that for a true freshman is pretty impressive.
I agree. I agree. But anyways, let's move on to the Big 12, where I get the first pick. And it's not so black and white as the SEC. Really isn't. And I've been battling back and forth in my brain over two guys. There's one guy who's he's a safer pick. In terms of like I know he's gonna get touches, but he's not so safe in the sense where like his running back room is a little bit crowded. I do think he's good. He averaged 7 yards a carry, but this other guy, there's there's this guy, and I already took my quarterback from the Big 12 in the last episode from Kansas. Give me Devin Neal from Kansas. He was unbelievable last year. He actually was unbelievable. 6 yards of carry in that offense, but he was the only explosive runner in that offense. Kai Thomas, their backup, 3 yards of carry. None of their other running backs averaged, well, if you were to measure by qualified carries, right? Like qualified number of carries. None of them even came close to Devin Neal. He runs hard. He runs so hard. He runs through people. I mean, he's very elusive. I just love his game. I think in a very explosive running offense like they have, where they return almost everyone on that offense, it's got to be Devin Neal. I think he's a guy. I think he could be a home run. I think he could be a guy that I look back on in this draft and be like, yeah, yeah. No, he was definitely gonna run for 1,400 yards and like 13 touchdowns. Like, yeah. So I'm very happy with that pick because I don't think there's a clear number one in the Big 12 at all.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. Him and Jalen Daniels is pretty dynamic. I think it's interesting how I have Rocket Sanders and KJ Jefferson on my team, and you got Jalen Daniels and Devin Neal.
We played each other
Um,
in the bowl game this last year.
yeah,
Went
yeah.
to OT. That was an awesome game.
He was actually going to be my second pick. My first pick, though, is still on the board, and it might be a little bit of unknown for people. He's actually listed as a tight end on ESPN. So say what you want about that, but it's CJ Donaldson from West Virginia. As a true freshman last year, played at 6'2", 240, and that's where they get the confusion of a tight end. But he was a monster last year. He was very, very impressive for that size. He had 82-yard rush. So that's shows you that elite high end speed that he can break runs away. Average 6 yards of carry as a true freshman. Tony Mathis Jr., the leader in that locker room or in that running back room, is gone. I believe he's at Houston now. So it's just Justin Johnson and CJ Donaldson that he's got to compete with. To be honest, that whole team, I'm not really counting on anything special offensively from it, but I think he's going to have high touchdown upside, and I think he's going to be one of the lone bright spots on that offense, and I'm going to lean into that. And he's got the body type to be able to be a bell cow, to be able to take a ton of carries for them.
Yeah, I like that pick. That was not my number two guy. My number two guy was actually Jonathan Brooks, which might surprise some people just because of how crowded that running back room was or is with Keelan Robinson. How about Cedric Baxter, who's going to be the number four, was, in my opinion, probably the number one running back in that class. Ruben Owens was number one on 24/7. Everyone has their opinions, right? They're pretty dang good at what they do, so maybe don't listen to me. But Cedric Baxter is a phenomenal, phenomenal talent. So I just think it's a very loaded Texas room. But I think Jonathan Brooks ultimately comes out of that. In the limited time we've seen him play, he is very, very, very good. He's got the size to play 3 downs. But again, if they're running back by committee, then I think the better pick is Devin Neal. Even though Jonathan Brooks in that offense, if they really start cooking with that offensive line, and he starts looking like a menace, I might be biting my tongue, um, not having picked him. But alas, I'm pretty happy with Devin Neal. I'm pretty happy.
Yeah, I don't hate that. I don't hate that at all. I'll say my
Yeah.
sleeper for the Big 12 though, real quick, is Corey Kinner from Cincinnati. Originally from Cincinnati, actually Cincinnati, Ohio in high school, committed to LSU out of high school, then transferred back to his hometown after his true freshman year. I actually liked him a lot at LSU, even though he only averaged 4 yards of carry as a true freshman. I liked what I saw from him. He's 5'9", 215 right now. And they're starting running backs off the NFL. I don't think their passing offense is going to be that elite. So I think they're going to need someone from that backfield to step up. And I think it's going to be Corey Kinner. Him and Emory Jones is an interesting backfield to see what Scott Satterfield can do with them. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be interesting. I don't know what that offense is gonna look like. We'll see how they adjust to the Big 12. It's not a bad sleeper. My sleeper is actually someone that probably a lot of people haven't gotten a chance to watch, and I didn't really get a chance to. Well, I'd seen him play, but I wasn't watching for him. Right, got a chance to like really dive a little bit deeper into his film a little bit. Guy by the name of Aiden Robbins, okay, who might not even get the starting job at BYU because that running back room is pretty loaded. They have a lot of guys that already have a lot of touches in that offense with experience right there. But Aiden Robbins is one of the more underrated running back transfers probably in the country. He was at Louisville, then transferred to UNLV. He's 6'3", 205. Wow. Big bruiser. We know BYU loves their bruisers too, and they also love big bruisers who have vision, which is exactly what he has. He's not so much like a big play guy, right? But he's got quick feet. Does that make sense? He's fast. He's not fast, but he's quick. Which is pretty dangerous for a guy like of his size. He's going to be an absolute monster in the red zone. So, there's no way I could justify taking him with the one pick right here, given that like that running back room might be crowded as well. I think he's really someone to watch out for. Aiden Robbins, BYU, definitely someone to look out for.
Yeah, the Big 12, like we said, it's not an elite running back conference right now. Like, well, last year you had Bijan, and honestly, the other Texas running back too was a monster,
Roshan,
Roshan.
dog.
Uh, so yeah, well, it was in this conference this year with all those new additions and seeing how those bodies and those defenses stack up against running games in the Big 12. But yeah,
Yeah, I agree. Now, giving you the first pick of the ACC.
to me, this is the easiest pick in the draft. It's Will Shipley, Clemson.
Yeah.
I
Dang it.
there's Yeah, I think there's other guys in the ACC that are pretty good, but his upside is crazy in that offense. How much they depend on him rushing and receiving in a PPR league is huge. He was very dynamic last year. We saw what he could do in a kind of limited offense. Hopefully, with Cade Klubnik and then Garrett Riley coming in, uh, they find more creative ways to get the ball in his hands and see what he can do. I think he's gonna have a monster year. I think he'll probably be a top 60 draft pick this coming season or this coming draft season. And yeah.
I mean, he had 210 carries. I mean, that's all you got to tell me. I mean, also, too, like, there were certain games where he just took over. I want to specifically go, if you go back and you watch that Syracuse game, Syracuse had a chance to win that game. They were not moving the ball on offense. And then what did they start doing? Just hand the ball off to Will Shipley. That's all they did. That's all they did to win that game. And they did it. And they did it. And then Syracuse kind of went on like a 6-game, 5-game, like just absolute losing streak there, which was such a bummer because they were started off so hot that season. But Will Shipley is an absolute monster. He's not going anywhere. They're not. I don't think they're going to decrease his touches. He's too elite of an athlete to like take the ball out of his hands. I think it'd be a mistake. I think Garrett Riley knows that. But I think like if he can find ways to make it more explosive, I think he'd be great. He had 1,100 yards this past season. I think it could be more. I think it could be a lot more. And it's not crazy to think like he could be one of the better running backs in the country statistically this season. Talk about guys like Rocket Sanders, Quinshon Judkins, who had monster seasons last year, but I really do think Will Shipley is very, very, very good. And he's an obvious one pick, which is why I kind of like don't like the fact that I get to give you the first pick in the ACC because it's just, I mean, it's so easy. So, but for my pick, kind of down between two guys. But the issue is I just gotta, I can't really take any chances here because it could be too much to recover from if Will Shipley just goes off and whoever I take in the ACC doesn't. But I think the safe pick here is Trey Benson. I think he's probably
Mhm.
your RB2 in the ACC. There's some other guys that are pretty decent, but Trey Benson's pretty good. He almost had 1,000 yards. He's probably going to get more touches in this offense if I had to guess because I think he looked really good last year. I think this offense is going to be better. Um, I just think that's a safe pick. I don't really have much further analysis than the fact that that's just a safe pick. He's going to be good in a good offense on a good team with good, decent offensive line and a good quarterback. That's really all you can ask for.
I think that's the right pick. He was my second guy. There's obviously a tier between, Shipley and Benson, but I think he was the right pick there with what their offense is going to do. The upside he has it in that offense, like you said. And he's actually good. He's good talent in his own right, too. There's no knock on Trey Benson. He's a really explosive runner.
I agree. I mean, yeah, he's a good player. He's a good player. I'm just upset I didn't get Will Shipley. But Oh, now we're going to the Pac-12, where I think.
Wait, real quick, real quick. We gotta give our justice to the sleepers in the ACC.
Oh, yep. Sorry, that's on me.
No, that's right. I want to give a shout out to Dante Smith, from Georgia Tech. Brent Key got the job there over our guy from Tulane for whatever reason. But happy for Brent Key. He was a former run game coordinator there, so I think he's going to focus on running the ball. He's got to replace Jeff Sims at quarterback, and he also was a good runner himself. So there's more carries open for Donta Smith. Hassan Hall is in the NFL now with the Browns. So I think Smith's got some opening for playing time. He had 87 carries last year, almost averaged 5 yards a carry. He also threw a touchdown pass, by the way. So that's fantasy points. A 1-for-1 with 24-yard
That
touchdown
is.
pass, which is kind of cool. But yeah, I think he could have a good year. Name the watch in Georgia Tech. He's not going to be Jahmyr Gibbs for them, but he could be a pretty good player for him.
Yeah, my sleeper would be like who I actually was teetering picking over Trey Benson just because I think he was splitting carries in an offense, and now he's going to get the full role. His name's Henry Parrish, running back for Miami. If they actually have an offense this year, which they might, I mean, who knows? Hopefully, Mario Cristobal gets that hire right. He'll be the bell cow. I mean, he had 130 carries last year. He's pretty decent, but he'll be the lead this time. Jalen Knighton gone, Ja'Cory Brown gone. There's just not a whole lot of other options, I think, in terms of like sleepers in the ACC. Well, there's sleepers in the ACC. That's wrong of me to say that, but in terms of like there are the purposes of what we're doing, Virginia Tech, not anyone I really love there. Virginia, not anyone. Well, it's not to say I don't love the guys there. It's just I think I like Henry Parrish better than those guys. Duke's got a running back by committee coming up. North Carolina State had a running back transfer. So I think I don't know. I think that's probably my sleeper. I don't think it was a very deep ACC running back class, I guess, if you want to call it that this year, for our purposes. But I think he was a guy that you could justify taking for sure.
Yeah, I like him a lot. He's from Ole Miss, I think. Good player.
Yep, he's pretty good. All right, moving on. Moving on to the Pac-12. This is kind of where the meat of the draft comes because like I think there's two guys that are if you're in my position, you're like, oh, no brainer. This is an easy pick. You can't go wrong with one of these two guys. And I'm not going to pick either of those two guys. Give me Damian Martinez. Give me Damian Martinez from Oregon State. And everyone is
Wow.
shocked right now. Everyone's shocked. Everyone's calling me idiot. Yeah, comments are blowing up. Who the heck is this guy? Why does he have a podcast? Like, what's going on here? Let's just hear me out. Okay. Um, he was the dominant runner last year. He actually split carries, not evenly, but he got the majority of the carries, but it wasn't even close in terms of the amount of production he had. I mean, he averaged 6 yards a carry. He had almost 1,000 yards, 161 carries. He split carries with Deshaun Fenwick, but he's gone. He's explosive. And let's go back. Let's talk about Oregon State, okay, as a whole, their offensive line. There's about like 8 to 10 teams that return their entire offensive line for this year and put Oregon State on that list. And not only are they returning everyone, they were a good offensive line last year. They were good. And there was a reason why they ran the ball so much last year. In fact, they ran the ball a lot more times than they threw the ball last year. If you're just looking at the numbers, they ran the ball more than they threw it. Now that could be because they didn't really have a quarterback. Now they got DJ Uyunglele. What I mean, come on. If you watch this guy run, you kind of just fall in love with just like his elite, like just elusiveness. When he gets to the second level, it's very hard to tackle him. It's very, very hard to tackle him. And he's going to get to the second level a lot because of that offensive line. I think this is a guy that like if he really cooks the way that I think he's going to cook, he could end up winning me this fantasy draft that we're doing. I also just want an excuse to talk about him and Oregon State because I love Oregon State, and I also think Damian Martinez is just a fantastic player.
I know you do. I know you love Oregon State, rightfully so, and I'm rooting for him too. But I think that might be the wrong pick. The problem is I kind of wanted you to take Bucky Irving, running back for Oregon, because you know how much I love him, and I'm actually not gonna take him. I didn't want to have to deny him, but I am because this isn't about who I think is better talent, who I think is going to be a higher NFL draft pick, more successful NFL career. This is about this season and fantasy wise. And the opportunity that Carson Steele has at UCLA is incredible. What he's going to do for them, I think, is going to mirror what Zach Charbonnet did, transferring in from the Midwest. Carson Steele come from Ball State. Charbonnet came from Michigan. He had 1,300 yards last year. He had 14 touchdowns. He also replaced DTR, Dorian Thompson Robinson, the quarterback, who had 600 yards and 12 touchdowns. That's almost 2,000 yards, 26 touchdowns you got to replace. Carson Steele's gotten there in spring and already has turned heads. Chip Kelly has high praise for him. Carson Steele's been a monster in the weight room already. They're winning over some guys in the locker room. I think he's a real good running back too. We saw what he did in the MAC, 1,500 yards. I don't. I think he's going to put up crazy numbers for UCLA and a Chip Kelly offense that likes to use running back by committee. But when you have an alpha dog in there, he's been shown to play the best running back and to feed the hot hand.
Yeah, it's really good. I thought you were gonna take Bucky Irving for sure. I thought you thought that I was gonna take Bucky Irving or Carson Steele, which I know you thought I did, but ah, yeah, I love Daniel Martinez. That's a good pick by you. I'm just gonna say I don't think it's gonna be the reason that I lose or you lose. I don't think that's gonna be. I don't think. I don't know. It could be. It could be. Carson Steele could be a maniac. He was a maniac last year. He was very, very good. But UCLA also has a lot of other talents in the running back room. But we'll see. I can't believe neither of us drafted Bucky Irving. I cannot believe that either of us did not draft Bucky Irving. So, anyone you're thinking about in terms of like who else are you looking out on your radar for this year?
I'm gonna give you two names because I couldn't pick between the two. Jaden Ott, California, was a true freshman last year. He'll be a workhorse this year. One of the only true bright spots on that offense returning from last year. And then Michael Wiley, Arizona, 6.8 yards per rush. For his receiving upside too. It's going to be a senior there. The Wildcats, him and Jaden Delora. They lose Dorian Singer, so they might have to rely on other pieces to keep that receiving game, passing game going well. And they might look to their backfield and Michael Wiley to do that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good pick. I think he could be really good. He could be really good. I know Jen Delore is one of your sleeper guys as well.
Mm-hmm.
We love Jed Fish. He's a dog. But my sleepers are actually could be in Colorado. It's not going to be just one, right? I think both Cavazier Smoke and Alden McCaskill are going to get touches this year. But I just don't know because everyone's talking about Shador Sanders. Everyone loves Travis Hunter, right? Adam Hopkins was a big commit. Yada yada yada. Xavier Weaver, who cares? I really really think if they want to win games, they got to run the ball well. They brought in 3 transfers on the offensive line, and they actually kept 2 of their offensive linemen, which is different than most of the other units on their team. I think that's the only unit, if you want to count like that, a unit, right? Wide receivers a unit, running backs, offensive line, defensive line. I think that's the only unit where they actually have more than one starter from last year returning. So that's not to say I'm high in their offensive line. It's still going to be a mess, but it'll be something I'm monitoring. I think everyone's going to be monitoring, right? Anytime. I mean, the name Deion Sanders, just people are going to have eyes on it. So, including me. That's all I'm saying.
I like that.
Time to move on. I don't like that I'm giving you this first pick. I
Big
don't like that
Ten.
I'm giving this first pick. We're moving on to the Big Ten. CD, who was your first pick for running back in the Big Ten?
I hope this doesn't come back to bite me. I'm not going to take Blake Corum because of some injury concern, because of some crowded backfield issues. I'm going to take Nicholas Singleton from Penn State. Talented true sophomore. Had a really, really good year last year. Him and Kay Allen broke some records. And I think it's still a crowded backfield, but I think he doesn't have the injury concerns that Blake Corum does. And I think he's going to separate from Kay Allen, and they're going to lean on him. When he gets hot, they're going to feed him, and he's going to have a Saquon Barkley type year that he did as a sophomore for Penn State. I hope it doesn't come back to bite me because I know Blake Corum is probably the surefire best running back in the Big Ten. But there's a lot of good running backs in the Big Ten. It was kind of a tough choice. There were some other guys, Wisconsin or maybe Ohio State, that backfield too, even Donovan Edwards too. But I ended up going with Nick Singleton because of all those reasons I missed. These reasons I listed, I think he's gonna have a breakout year.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would agree with you on the fact that Nick Singleton's going to have a breakout year. I don't think people are going to agree with you the fact that you did not take Blake Corum, and I'm going to go ahead and take him. I get it. Get why you didn't take him, right? Donovan Edwards is very, very good. I've seen him play a lot of times, and he is very, very good. I might like him just as much as Blake Corum, honestly. He's fantastic. He's explosive. He's a good runner. But to me, Blake Corum is the best running back in college football until proven otherwise, right? He's the best running back returning this year. He could have gone to the NFL. Even with his injuries, he would have been. I think he came back, right, to maximize his draft value. I also think he has quote unquote unfinished business, like people do, what they have when they return or whatever. I just think he's a fantastic player. I get that, Michigan might be playing in some blowout games where, starters might not get as much time. They got a pretty cupcake schedule this year, especially out of conference. So that could hurt his fantasy chances, or that could his fantasy value, his stats could blow up. I think he's some people's pick to win the Heisman. I'm not gonna go that far. I'm not. We don't bet a lot of Heisman's on this show just for the reason because it's just it feels like you're just flushing money down the toilet. Um, but I don't know. I think he's really really good. I just think he was my number one guy, and I got him, so I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah, I like that. I think my sleeper was gonna be Jalen Berger, but then I remembered how he burned me last year when he was my sleeper running back in the Big Ten from Colorado, transferred into Michigan State. Did not have the year he was looking for. Nobody on that team did at Michigan State. Instead, I'm gonna go with a red shirt sophomore,
Come
Devin
on.
Mac Devin McAbee from Purdue. He had almost 200 carries last year in an offense that was highly productive throwing the ball. And you lose Aiden O'Connell, who had 500 passing attempts, and Charlie Jones, who had over 1,300 yards. A lot of offense is going to be shifted to Devin McAbee now in his third year, second year as the leading rusher. He averaged 5 yards a carry, still had 9 TDs. He's a guy that Big Ten circles know about because, especially in the West, if you played him, he's hard to tackle. He's a good player. But I think nationally he's going to start getting some attention that he deserves, and we'll see how he does this coming fall.
Yeah, I think that's a good pick. And like, if he was in a conference like the ACC, I think I would have been all over that, over Trey Benson in terms of like the value there. In the Big 12, I think you could have justified like if Purdue was in the Big 12, you could justify taking him there. But he's just buried behind a lot of running backs. I do think like it's not so much a sleeper, but I think people are kind of forgetting like Braylon Allen is like a pretty good player. He's a pretty good player. He had a very, very good freshman year. I think people thought his sophomore year was going to be a bit better than it was. I think his sophomore year was a little underwhelming. Um, he's gotten shut down a couple times. But a lot of that was due to the fact that they were very one dimensional. And Phil Longo comes over there. I would understand if you didn't want to draft him because Phil Longo likes to throw a ball, yada yada. Phil Longo, he's accommodated some running backs in North Carolina. He had 2,000-yard rushers in one season, Michael Carter and Javante Williams. So I don't think it's like crazy, right? If they're leaning on Braylon Allen, especially like yesterday I talked a lot about might be hard to throw the ball in the Big Ten West, up north in the snow and like the bad weather, the cold. Um, just because they're changing offenses doesn't mean that they can't hand the ball off to Braylon Allen when it matters down the stretch. So, um, he honestly was probably my guy after Nick Singleton. If you had twist my arm and you had the Blake Corum, all of a sudden transferred out of there for some odd reason, or Nick Singleton was, I don't know, already taken. I guess you could convince me to take Braylon Allen as, that third running back in there. I don't think he's the most talented running back in the Big Ten. I think he's probably number 5 or 6 because I think that Ohio State backfield. I think everyone in that backfield is just more talented than he is. But I think he's really, really good. I think Wisconsin fans love him. I think you're gonna get a chance to see him probably in a better offense than more like what he's meant to be in. I don't know if he's actually meant to be in an offense like this. I don't know that his fit is actually great for this, but I still think he can be productive in this offense. So I'm excited to see what he can do. So he's my sleeper, not so sleeper, like a guy that like I think people kind of just forgot about after his freshman year. I think people consensusly thought he was one of the best running backs in college football going into last year, but I think the hype train's kind of died off. But I think he could kind of revive his image here this season for sure.
Yeah, it's not that I'm not high on Braylon Allen. It scares me because I don't know how he fits in that offense. I know running backs can be successful, but I don't know if he's the type of running back to do that. I think Ches Malucci is almost a better fit in that offense, and we'll see if he steals carries from Braylon Allen. But people forget. I mean, everyone was reminded his true freshman year he was 17 years old, lighting up college football. But he's only 19 years old. Still, he just turned 19 in January, so he's still developing. He's still growing. He's got a
That's
lot to learn.
crazy. That's
Yeah,
crazy
exactly.
that he's only 19 and he's had 2 full seasons of workload.
Exactly. He'll have a third one before he turns 20. So yeah, I'm rooting. Well, I'm not rooting for him, but I think I could see him do well in that Wisconsin offense. Ohio State, Trayvon Henderson, I think people forget about. I almost took him this year in the one spot, but Mayan Williams kind of scared me away, and Trayvon Henderson's injury history. I don't know exactly. It wasn't very clear what happened last year and why he didn't play as much as he did. I thought he could have come back for that Georgia game and even that Michigan game, but I don't know. The Big Ten's are all pretty loaded this year, running back, and
Caleb
we love that
Johnson.
though.
Caleb Johnson,
Yeah,
Iowa. That's another guy. So, anyways, let's move on to our G5 alternates. So we're each gonna get two. Okay. Could go with the son of a living legend. Here with the first pick. My first pick is gonna be Marquez Cooper. I don't know if a lot of people know who he is. He was Kent State. Was really good in that offense. Really, really good. Grew up in Maryland, 1,300 yards and 13 touchdowns. I mean, that's all you can say in that offense. And now he's going into that system where Carson Steele absolutely thrives. Um, yeah, I think Marquis Cooper's more talented than Carson Steele. I'm gonna go say that straight up. Um, and I think he can get drafted too. Late rounds in NFL draft day. I think he's a guy that people just don't know enough about him. I think he's really, really, really talented. He played as a freshman. I saw him play live at Kyle Field. He's really good. He is really, really good. So I'm a big fan. That's gonna be my number one pick. I don't think a lot of people would have had him as their number one pick, but I'm gonna take him.
yeah, I don't hate that. I think he's a good player. I think it's interesting. He entered the transfer portal, I believe, before Kenny Burns was hired there. Kenny Burns is a well-known, very well-established running backs coach, and I think he would have helped Marcus Cooper at Kent State. But obviously, that Ball State offense, like you said, has shown to have a lot of success with Carson Steele. And then Kenny Burns also brought in some other running backs too that would have competed in at Kent State. But anyways, I think my guy, my first alternate for G5 will be Rasheen Ali from Marshall.
Dang it!
Yep.
Oh, I thought I
I,
was hoping. Dang it, dude! I was hoping you would like forget about him.
I think people forget that as a true freshman, he had over 1,400 yards and 23 touchdowns two
Yes,
years ago. He was a monster for Charles Huff and that Marshall offense. And even last year, without him, he was hurt for 10 games, had a knee injury. He also battled, some mental and emotional health problems. This guy you really, really want to root for. Battle tested, obviously, very tough kid. But they still were 17th in the country in rushing yards as a team without him for most of the year. He came back, had a really good bowl game, which was good to see him progress. And I think he's going to take another step forward from that injury, another offseason removed from that injury. And I think he's going to have a monster year. And I'm not worried. If someone my running backs goes down, I think I'll be just fine.
yeah. Oh, jeez, dude. I should have taken him as my first guy. I was hoping that you'd forget about him, and that's a mistake. I'm gonna claim that as a mistake. That's a mistake that I just made. Um, But I'm not gonna make a mistake with this pick. I'm gonna go Frank Gore Jr., son of a living legend. 1,300 yards, 9 tutters, 220 plus carries. He might get more carries next year. I mean, because he kind of did everything in that offense. He is a monster. If you haven't got a chance to see him play, he plays kind of like his dad. In the sense where he's pretty physical, but uh, he honestly a little more elusive. But I'm not gonna say like he is Frank Gore. Well, he is Frank Gore. That's his name. But come on, like Frank Gore, like top 5 rushing leader all time in the NFL. I just think he's a really good player, and I think fantasy value, he just brings that to the table. I think he's very, very, very good. So I think this is a good G5 talent to get. Probably in that tier 1 of G5 running backs. If I had to, make a tier list, uh, definitely, definitely happy about getting him here though. So I'm okay with that. I thought you were gonna end up getting him because I thought I was gonna get Rashid Ali. Oh, I thought you were gonna take Frank Gore maybe at that pick, but
I would have taken
alas,
Frank Gore at this pick here, but I'm not too worried who I'm going to settle for. I'm going to take George Halani from Boise State, and an offense that really likes to run the ball. They ran the ball 550 times last season. They got a quarterback that fits a running scheme in Green, Taylor Green, that we talked about yesterday at Boise State. Dynamic player. Those two in the backfield, really interesting. Holani has been a stud his true freshman year. He was there, had over 1,000 yards. Battle injuries the past 2 years. Showed more of that true freshman flash that he did the past 2 years this year when he's recovered from the injury. So hopefully this year takes another step forward. Thing is, he does have, they do like to split carries. I mean, uh, Ashton Jant, Ashton Janty, I'm sorry, had 150 carries too his freshman year at Boise State, but I think that was more towards just getting Holani back into shape, into football shape, and I think he'll have a lot of production this year for Boise State.
that's a good pick. That's a good pick. I think there's 3 guys in that tier 1 for me. I think that guy like lands just outside tier 1, but you also got Rashid Ali. So I mean, what are we talking about here? George Alani is very good. Um, I mean, my sleeper would have been like Bangura over at Ohio. I think he's really good. 1,000 yards. I mean, and he comes back after having 13 tutters as well. Um, with Curtis Rourke, that's going to be an elite backfield for MAC standards. I mean, that is probably going to be the premier backfield of the MAC. Again, the Marquise Cooper's there, but not the same kind of quarterback talent over there as Curtis Rourke. But and of course, dude Bangura is a red shirt sophomore. So I mean, he's going to get some action. So that would have been a guy that I would have put in tier 2. I think he's really really good.
Yeah, my tier 2 guys would have been LaDamian Webb, South Alabama, former JUCO guy, had 1,000 yards last year in a really productive South Alabama team. Jermaine Brown Jr. from UAB entering the AAC. He's got to replace Dwayne McBride and everything he did last year. We know how good Dwayne McBride was. Now we'll see about Trent Dilfer and UAB. That's why I kind of didn't have him in that first tier because of what the unknowns about that offense is, but he was still really good last year in his limited production. I want to give a shout out though to SMU's running back room. Quietly, well, almost not even quietly, they have built a very productive, very talented running back room with Jalen Knighton transferring over from Miami. They had Kamar Wheaton last year, transferred from Alabama, was a former 5-star who averaged 5 yards per carry last year for them. LJ Johnson from Texas A&M transferred in this offseason, I think. And then their starter, Tyler Levine, who's coming off an injury, but he still was really good last year, their leading rusher. So I think that's a really cool room there for, I think, Rhett Lashley and SMU.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think they seems like they've acquired quite the talent over there. And it's weird that like some of these G5 schools, like every year in the draft, you have really really good G5 guys come out, and you're just kind of shocked that they didn't transfer to some of these bigger schools, but they don't need to because they just produce. They just produce where they're at. I mean, a guy like Marquis Cooper, he transferred to another team in the actual MAC. Frank Gore Jr. probably could have gone somewhere else, but he likes where he's at Southern Miss. So I just find it really interesting that a lot of these guys stay where they are, and I would not be surprised if some of these guys outproduce some of the other guys on our Power Five list. In fact, I would not be surprised if some of the leading rushers in the entire country are on our G5 list here. Like
Oh yeah.
Rashid Lee, Marcus Cooper, Frank Gore Jr. I would not be surprised if any of those guys led the country in rushing this upcoming year.
Well, yeah, and the cool thing about G5 running backs too is a lot of times, uh, not necessarily this list we built here, but you've seen in the past elite transfers, very talented players that just couldn't find the field at their team. They transfer over to Group of Five and they have really productive years and they end up going to do great things. I mean, look at Jerome Ford a couple years ago for Cincinnati, was playing at Bama, and now he's in the NFL through Cincinnati. So I think it's cool. I'm rooting for the G5 schools, and I think I'm not worried if one of my guys goes down, one or two of my guys goes down. I think we'll both be fine.
Yeah, I think both of our drafts are pretty dang good. I really like your team. To be honest, I'm happy that I got Blake Corum. I'll run through the list real quick. Myself, MD got Quinshon Judkins, Devin Neal, Trey Benson, Damian Martinez. Watch out. Blake Corum, Marquez Cooper, Frank Gore Jr. CD ended up with Rocket Sanders or Raheem Sanders, CJ Donaldson, Will Shipley, Carson Steele, Nick Singleton, Rashid Ali, and George Lonnie. Thank you guys very much for tuning in. This is all we have time for today. Can't wait for you guys to join us in the next pass catchers episode where we draft pass catchers across conferences, wide receivers, and tight ends. That's going to be really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That's
A
going to
lot
be
of good.
interesting. A lot of good talent. I don't think our lists are going to cross over a whole lot because I think there's a lot of guys that could break out. A lot of really, really talented guys across all of college football. G5, SEC, Big 12, ACC, anywhere you go, you're going to have really talented wide receivers. I think this could be not the year of the wide receiver, but there's some. I think there's some people are not talking about. So, but yeah, thanks again, guys. Make sure to check us out on Twitter at the Redshirt Soft. That's at the Redshirt Soft. Send in your mailbag questions to the Redshirt Sophomore@gmail.com. Check us out on Spotify and YouTube.